Chapter 12 of Mystery at Number 6. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Mystery at Number 6 by Augusta Huell Seaman. Chapter 12. Cross Purposes. In the brief space of time before he answered, Sidney managed to keep his head and hastily review the possibilities. As a matter of fact, he considered, Delight had not extracted any promise from them never to disclose the simple occurrence of their knowing her. The promise related mainly to the curious papers she had confided to them, and to the history of her life as she had told it to them. Perhaps, then, there was no reason why Sidney should not answer, fully and truthfully, Mr. Treadwell's query. Accordingly, while Bernice held her breath to the stifling point, he replied calmly, "Well, yes. As a matter of fact, we did see a young girl, in and about the place. Also, there seemed to be a woman there. Perhaps that was Jerry's wife." Mr. Treadwell ignored the latter side issue. "You saw the girl? And what was she like, may I ask? Did you ever get close enough to her to describe her?" His keen blue eyes seemed to bore into Sidney's very soul. "She came around the pool to where we were," admitted Sidney. "She looked like an Indian at first glance, or a very dark cracker type. Black hair, very tanned complexion. But her eyes were quite beautiful, deep iris blue with long lashes." "Did she speak? Did she talk to you?" Mr. Treadwell probed, still deeper. "Why, yes. I was fishing and she was rather shy, but she got talking to Bernice and they had quite a conversation, I believe." Immediately Mr. Treadwell whirled around to Bernice. "What did she say, may I ask? How did she speak? Did she seem very ignorant?" Bernice could have cheerfully scalped Sidney for thus involving her in the affair, but she replied bravely. "She seemed a very sweet little thing, gentle and shy and very attractive." Truth to tell, Bernice was somewhat irritated at this rather autocratic catechizing and suddenly had a bold inspiration, so that she ended with, "But may I ask why you are so interested in her, Mr. Treadwell? I thought it was Jerry you particularly wanted to see." The effect on Mr. Treadwell of this sudden turning of the tables was instantaneous. "Oh, well, that is a matter I can't very well explain just at present," he stammered. "To be frank with you, this matter is very involved. A legal difficulty. It would be, very indiscreet to discuss it." For a moment he was silent, puzzled apparently as to how to proceed. He sensed the fact that the young people did not quite relish this cross-questioning, yet they were plainly admissions that he was still very anxious they should make. Sidney and Bernice said nothing and let him struggle with the difficulty without aid. "There is one thing I would very much like to ask," he began again, presently. Did you, in the course of your conversation with her, discover what she was called? What was her name?" The two young people glanced at each other in rather a panic. What was it best to answer to this? To disclose that might be a decidedly damaging admission, especially if this man's interest was not friendly. Yet how could they evade the truth? Sidney took the matter in his own hands. "We asked her name, when we told her ours, and she said she was called Dell, but that her real name was Delight." The effect of this statement on Mr. Treadwell was very singular. His eyes opened wide for an instant and he drew a gasping breath and turned and walked off toward the pool. There he stood, with his hands crammed in his pockets, staring down into the limpid water while the cousins eyed him uneasily and wondered what was coming next. "Oh, are we doing right, Sidney?" murmured Bernice. "Ought we to have told so much?" "Can't very well help ourselves. He has us cornered good and proper. But that was a great dig you gave him, Bernice. You quite bowled him off his feet for a minute. Don't worry about the thing. If I were only sure what his motives were, I'd know better how to answer. The trouble is, we don't know. We may be doing Delight a lot of harm, or we may be holding back when it's all for her good. I wish I knew. Here he comes back again." But in the short interval of time, Mr. Treadwell's manner had changed entirely, and when he again approached them it was to take an entirely new tack. His manner was open and frank, but exceedingly firm. "It may seem very unwarranted of me to question you so closely," he began, "but there are reasons, the best of reasons, why I must sift this matter to the bottom. Do pardon me for this rather abrupt way of putting it. I feel absolutely certain that there are aspects of this affair that you are acquainted with and have not, for some reason, seen fit to disclose to me. Of course I do not know why, and perhaps have no right to ask. But you would oblige me very much if you would tell me whether you knew, before we came here today, that Jerry and the rest had decamped?" "Yes," admitted Sydney manfully, "we did. But there were reasons why we felt we had no right to tell you so." "Then you really do know more of this matter. May I inquire further if you knew where they went, and by what route?" Sydney drew a long breath. "That I cannot tell you. I have no right. We have given a promise." "Not to Jerry, I hope," flashed Mr. Tredwell. "No, to Delight." Mr. Tredwell appeared relieved at this admission. "I suppose I have no right to inquire, but I should very much like to know why she extracted that promise." "I'm sorry, but I don't believe I can tell you that either," replied Sydney firmly. "Then perhaps you would be willing to answer this. Do you know anything about this child's relations with the other two she lived with? Were they kind to her? Did she seem fond of them?" "I think it's all right to answer that," agreed Sydney. "They were very kind to her, so I understand, especially Jerry. She called him Uncle Jerry, and said she was extremely fond of him. I do not think she felt the same way toward his wife. He has only married her recently." "Thanks. That at least gives me a new impression of things. May I inquire if you knew whether she went away with them this last time willingly?" Again Sydney was obliged to hedge. This was very dangerous ground. I cannot tell you that," he said firmly. "I see," acquiesced Mr. Tredwell. Suddenly he changed his ground again. "If I were a mind to," he added, "I think I could give you a little piece of information that would startle you quite a bit. On further consideration I believe I will give it. Do you know this? Last Tuesday afternoon, you two folks sat in the east corner of the hotel veranda and had a long and animated discussion of this very affair, much of which I could not help but overhear, as my room is right at that corner. I had come back to the hotel in the early afternoon, feeling a trifle unwell, and lay down on my bed for a nap. After a while I woke out of a sound sleep and heard voices conversing outside. I'm rather used to that, as my window opens right on the veranda, and I'm forced occasionally to be an unseen third party to conversations outside, much against my will. I tried to go to sleep again and shut out your voices, but suddenly I caught the name Jerry and something about the Everglades, and then, I confess, I listened with all my ears, for it is of the utmost importance that I get to the bottom of this matter. Unfortunately for me, you spoke in the main in rather low tones and I lost often quite important items. But I want to tell you very frankly that I gleaned enough to give me almost all the clues I need. Almost, but not quite. I apologize deeply for having had to do this. I detest and despise the role of eavesdropper, but in this case, if you knew all the facts, I think you would say I was justified. I heard you, Sydney, announce that you were going to seek deliberately to cultivate my acquaintance, and I made the task easy, as I was equally anxious to cultivate yours." He stopped short, to mark the effect of his amazing disclosure. A bomb suddenly exploded in their midst could not have astounded them more. In a veritable panic of dismay they gazed at each other. Why had they not been more careful? Why had they not realized that the hotel veranda was no place to discuss an affair so secret, that it might not be as deserted as it seemed? But there was no hope for it now. One phase of the matter angered Sydney, and he demanded in a tone of repressed annoyance, "Why, then, have you kept us in ignorance of all this, since you have discovered what you did? Why did you not tell us right away that you had overheard?" "Turnabout's fair play," laughed Mr. Tredwell. "You seemed determined to hold me off and pump me as hard as you could, without my realizing it. I determined I'd do the same and see what each could make out of it. But isn't it time we stopped working at cross purposes? What is the advantage?" "It isn't a question of advantage," answered Sydney, relaxing a bit. "Since you have been so frank with us, I may as well tell you that we have become deeply interested in the girl. She has confided to us as much as she knows of her history, and I confess there seems to be a dark mystery about it all somewhere. But she made us solemnly promise we wouldn't tell anyone, and we're not going to break it. We don't want any harm to come to her." "If I were to assure you," began Mr. Tredwell, "on my word of honor, that no harm is going to come to her through my investigations, but only good, would it make any difference in your feeling about the matter?" "Most certainly it would," cried Sydney, brightening up. And Bernice nodded a vigorous assent. Only I don't see how that's going to affect the matter of the promise. That'll have to hold good no matter what the circumstances.